Domestic violence, factors and consequences. Factors associated with domestic violence. Many factors can be associated with domestic violence. These aspects are the reason why people get involved in it. One very common factor linked with domestic violence is the childhood of the abuser. This person is often deprived of a normal childhood. They may have been brought up in an environment where violence is taught or observed. Frequently, the person's parents behave similarly. This is where they learn such behavior and hence inflict violence on their family. This person may also have poor self-esteem as a child because of the way they are treated and neglected by those around them. They may have little or no self-worth, so they feel insecure, and to get over this, they refer to domestic violence. Inflicting violence on those around them allows the abuser to feel superior and more powerful. Drug and alcohol abuse is also a factor that is often associated with domestic violence. Under the influence of different substances, the person may lose consciousness and act aggressively, and as a result, the family members can become victims. Poor financial conditions or any other stage of life where a person may experience money shortages could be responsible for domestic violence. In such circumstances, the person is usually under a lot of pressure, and hence domestic violence helps reduce frustration and stress. The consequences of domestic violence. Domestic violence has both short and long-term effects on the victims. First of all, domestic violence makes the victim physically and mentally vulnerable. The abused may recover from the physical injuries, however, the mental damage can linger forever. It decreases the self-worth of the victim, so they may feel very vulnerable around other people. Besides, domestic violence can come in the way of daily functions or routine activities. For instance, it may interfere with the person at work. Domestic violence also affects the interpersonal relationships of the victims with others in their lives. The abused stops trusting other people, and hence it takes time for them to get comfortable around strangers, which hinders the development of relationships. Post-traumatic stress disorder is another very common psychological result of domestic violence. The victim becomes depressed and anxious and starts to have flashbacks and nightmares. This often becomes a long-term disorder that has to be treated with proper counseling and medication. The development of the child exposed to domestic violence can be affected for the moment or permanently. The child may also become antisocial since relationships with their peers may be affected negatively. The emotional and physical needs of these children also get ignored, and as a result, they become subtracted from life. Children exposed to violence may practice such behavior in the future. After different studies were carried out, it was found that constant exposure to abuse can lead to a higher risk of infant deaths and miscarriages. Eating, sleeping, sex, and anxiety disorders are common, too. To escape from reality, the victim may become dependent on alcohol or drug abuse. If violence is constantly inflicted on them, the abused may suffer from most of these consequences. Resources available to help women. Many resources are available to women, however, they need to know about them and have the courage to make use of these resources. The victim must first observe the behavior towards themselves, and then, if domestic abuse is suspected, it must be reported to the authorities. This is the first step that will help the victim realize that they need help. If the person is being exposed to domestic violence, one of the choices that the victim has is to live in a shelter for battered women. This shelter would keep them safe from any kind of interaction with the abuser. It is the most common option that victims of domestic violence go for when they do not have anyone to turn to. This option is convenient since the person can meet those suffering from the same problem and hence, relate to them. Legal action can also be taken against the abuser. It includes getting a restraining order from the court. It can be considered a future protection since the abuser will not be allowed to approach the victim. Once the victim has made sure that they are safe, they have to receive help from a psychologist to get over the traumatic past and avoid any long-term effects. This is absolutely crucial because if not done, the victim can become very vulnerable and have problems in trying to lead a normal life again. Another option that is rarely successful is taking the abuser to a psychiatrist or a counselor. It may change their behavior but only in very few cases. It is only possible if the abuser is taken to a counselor right in the beginning before violent behavior becomes a habit.